You are listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with Skafy and Lindsay, and producer Shell's with us today. If you're listening live, today's the 24th of March, 2026, and this is the best place to start your day with positive and uplifting thoughts. What are we going to be talking about next, Lindsay? What are the topics that you'll be bringing?
I will be talking about a father and son going for some walks around the world to deal with autism.
Okay, well, we can't wait to hear that story. I'm going to be talking about some of the news regarding the hikes in grocery prices, like in food.
Not hiking
prices.
around the world, but hiking.
That's right. It's a different kind of hike. It's a price hike, not a nature hike. That's not the good type of hike.
You might need to do some nature hiking to do some foraging next.
But actually, when I talk about that and talk about a Bible story that I think it's helped me to gain some perspective on things. So you have to wait and see what stories. One of the coolest / craziest, I think, stories in the Bible of all times. We are also going to have an interview today with Dr. David Tasker.
Yeah.
He's a theologian, he's a scholar, and he's going to be sharing with us about a time where he had a real encounter with God, where he almost lost his life, but when he was in a boat sailing between two islands, like in the middle of the ocean, and then these absolutely biblical proportions storm hit him.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what happens when you are out at the little boat in the sea and a storm hits you like real bad, what happens? If you're curious about that, well, today Dr. David Tasker is going to be sharing his experience, his testimony with us. But first up, we are going to serve you a new quiz question. So play along with us. 0491 064 669. Please, producer Shells.
All right. I think these are easy today. Name at least one of the two Bible heroes recorded as wearing clothing of hair and a leather belt. Can you guys know? Yep, you've got the one of them and you've got the other one of them. They did opposite ones. So you guys can text us into 0491 064 669. Name at least one of the two Bible heroes recorded as wearing clothing of hair and a leather belt.
Okay, and the brand of the camel hair clothing that they were using as well, if you know it.
The brand?
The brand, yes.
Of the camel hair clothing?
Yes, in case they know it.
What?
Chidumps. Where's the
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah.
Am I missing something?
He's being silly, cracking a joke.
But like, I mean, there was no brand.
Of course there was no brand.
I just...
And even if there was no way we could
Crickets.
know.
I think I hear crickets.
All right, Lindsay Lou, tell me about this journey of father and son.
Yes.
Where are they hiking exactly?
They're hiking all around the place. Let me bring it up. So this is father and son. The son's name is Ashton, and I've forgotten Daniel is the father. And so Daniel and Ashton Toole, they are going to undertake 6 hikes around the world, totaling more than 1,300 kilometers just this year.
Okay.
They are from New South Wales.
Wow.
And they're indirectly raising awareness for Tourette's syndrome. They are about to go on a 15-day Larapinta Trail in the Northern Territory after completing a walk down the New South Wales coast into Victoria. So they're doing a few walks in Australia. They're also planning to do France and Switzerland and I believe the UK, I think into Scotland. And so the reason why they're doing all of this walking this year is because Ashton, who is 18 years old, he was diagnosed with autism when he was very young, as well as ADHD, and then more recently with Tourette's syndrome. So he's got quite a bit going on.
What's Tourette's syndrome?
Look, I am not super familiar with it, but as far as I'm aware, it is a syndrome where there's just uncontrollable words and actions that take place at random times. So they might be like physical tics, or they might be speaking certain things. Sometimes there is swearing involved. Yeah, it's one particular type of Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome gives you these involuntary tics. Yes.
Some of these tics are vocal, and in a group of Tourette syndrome afflicted people. They have this uncontrollable urge to swear.
Sure.
And I think that it became famous because of that. A lot of people think, oh, wow, what's that person? And of course, that brings a lot of anxiety and social anxiety because, you never know if you're going to say something that will offend someone. It's quite a difficult condition to live with.
Yeah. And it's not only difficult for the person who is diagnosed with it, but it's also difficult for the family who are, raising this child who is doing things that are not socially acceptable in most circumstances, right? And so his parents have struggled over the years with raising him, but they have been very blessed with people who are supportive and with government assistance and people in their community and friends and family who are supportive. And so back when Ashton was 16 years old, he and his father went for a multi-day hike. I believe it was like a 10-day hike in New South Wales. And honestly, that kid just loved it so much. He was running up ahead of his father. His father just was not able to keep up with him. He's like, Ashton is just loving every second of this. And he responds really, really well to being outside in nature, just walking around for days on end. That's the thing that he loves the most. That is his hyperfixation with his ADHD, his autism, and his Tourette's all combined. That's the thing that he loves the most.
Spend some time outdoors.
We live in such a blessed country where we have so many support systems for people who experience life like this. My own brother has autism spectrum. And so I've seen this up close firsthand in my own life, the kind of support that you can receive as a family experiencing these types of challenges. And so it's just really cool to see that this father is able to take off an entire year of work and be supported in taking his son on these hikes around Australia and around the world, and it not be a major challenge for them as a family in order to do this thing that, they're going to be able to look back on with really fun memories. And
can we follow them? Are they going to have some kind of social media presence?
I'm not sure about that.
Producer Shao, can you try to find out for us if that father and son, they have an Instagram account that we can recommend people to follow? So what are their names again, Lindsay?
So Daniel and Ashton Toole, so Toole.
Okay. Daniel and Ashton Toole. All right. Producer Shells is looking at the interwebs to see if she can find more information about it. That is fascinating. So what else did you find interesting about that story, Lindsay? Or why do you think that story, why did you bring it up? What do you like about it?
Look, I love, like I mentioned a moment ago, I love the amount of support that's available for them. But it's also interesting.
By support, what do you mean? So is the government paying for all of that?
Look, they haven't said directly how, but I believe there is a degree of government support in probably providing for the father as a carer in order to, take him on these trips.
NDIS.
Yeah, probably NDIS type of support. It's so good for them bonding together. And even to the point where Ashton was diagnosed with such severe autism that he wasn't able to string any words together into a sentence. But now he's able to string 5 or 6 words together. Now that they're out on the trail, so much. They're spending so much time together one-on-one. They're working together to avoid, poisonous snakes and to make sure that they can get out if there's an emergency. They're watching out for bushfires and stuff. They're really on a proper adventure together.
They're on a proper adventure, and it's a very healing adventure.
It is so healing that
actually
now
healing.
He's actually beginning to become more verbal out of the process. This is true therapy for Ashton to become
amazing,
a more well-developed human being. He's 18 and he's beginning to speak for the first time properly. With words stringing together in little tiny sentences.
When the amazing things happens when we are surrounded by God's creation.
Yeah, definitely. So they've got that support. He's developing verbally, and also while they're out on the trails, the father has to go around and speak to anyone who's sharing a campsite with them and be like, hey, just so you know, you might hear some random sounds at random times. Don't be freaked out. It's just my son has Tourette's and we're going on this hike together. And so they've had conversations with like multiple hundreds of people and brought more awareness to these people.
Wow.
And by creating this awareness, more people out there in the world are able to be more, I guess, kind and understanding to other people out in the world that they connect with after they've connected with this father and son, and they can understand the Tourette's syndrome a lot better and be more compassionate. So it's making Australia a better place right now.
Yeah. Look, I love it. You know what? I can see the heart of God, particularly in that relationship between the father, Daniel, and his son, Ashton. And I'll tell you where. It reminds me of a Bible passage in the book of Revelation that says that God took the women into the wilderness and tended for her for a period of time.
Yeah.
So it's a symbolic of saying that God took his church into the wilderness, into a place where there was not going to be a lot of people around, so that God could tender for her and could look after her. And we see the fulfillment of that prophecy in history when we see, for example, Christians moving from Europe into the United States, into the newfound land of the United States of America, where they could find religious freedom. This is one of the interesting things about America. America was probably one of the, if not the only, but like probably the country where immigration happened at its inception, mostly because people were trying to just live according to their convictions. They did not want to subject themselves to the authority and the control of the ruling power and the ruling religion, which was the Church of England at the time in England. And it reminds me of that verse because it's almost like God is saying, look, if the world does not appreciate you, that's okay. I appreciate you, and I'm going to take you with me on a journey so that I can develop you, so that you can grow, so that we can spend time together. And I think that it's amazing, so that heart of this father saying, you know what, son, I love you. I want to spend time with you. I want to spend quality time with you. I'm actually making sacrifices so we can do this together. And as we do, guess what? You are going to be a blessing to other people. That which other people could have pointed out as, hey, this is a curse. Well, God is going to transform that in a blessing, because through your life, we're going to help other people have more compassion for others and understanding of what's happening. And even how being there in the nature was healing in and of itself to young Ashton. So thanks for bringing that story. It's powerful.
I've tried to find, sorry, I can't find anything.
Can't find anything? Okay, we'll if we find something, or if you know more details about that story, radio friend, let us know here. We'd love to be able to follow. I would love to be able to follow Daniel and Ashton in their adventures around the world and learning more about their life, their story, and their message.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now, it's time for a quiz answer. Let's get that, please, producer Chelsea.
My screen decided to fall asleep. 1 second.
That's okay.
Okay, it's back.
It's back with you.
It's woken up.
All right.
Okay, so there was two, and you could pick one. Most people picked the one Lindsay wrote. So you had to name at least one of the two Bible heroes recorded as wearing clothing of hair and a leather belt. And most people said John the Baptist, which was correct. And the other one was Elijah, which is what Skafy said.
Okay.
There you go.
So good job.
Good job.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Producer Shells. I want to talk about another kind of hike, Lindsay.
Tell us about
Not
this
a
hike.
nice hike around the bushland of New South Wales or the Northern Territory.
It's the only good kind of hike, though.
That is the only good kind of hike. We're talking about price hikes now. Now, farmers are warning that the National Farmers Federation is expecting food prices to rise within weeks. So the transport unions, the Transport Workers Union, trucking employers and the industry groups have urged the federal government to amend the Fair Work Act to enable emergency powers to deal with surging fuel prices. What do we do? Basically, they're saying, look, can anybody help? Maybe the government can help to subsidize the fuel prices for truckies. Otherwise, everybody will be paying a very hefty bill with food.
That's crazy.
So that is the news. And look, I cannot say that we have not seen this coming. This was an obvious repercussion from the current logistical challenges caused by the Iranian war and the oil shortages. I know that there's a lot of these the middlemen and gas stations and the actually fuel distributors that are being investigated. Premier Chris Minns yesterday said in New South Wales that they have suspicions that some of these middlemen are just like jacking up prices or hiking up prices just so that they can make some handsome profits over the lives of just like desperate people.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah, look, there's a process that needs to be followed. They have to investigate. We cannot just like assume it. But look, when you look at it, there's very strong suspicions that this is happening. Now, I actually want to talk to you about a time in the Bible where they had a similar situation, but probably worse. And I think that this is a good thing that it was worse, because sometimes when you're having it tough, sometimes thinking that like other people have it even tougher than you sometimes can bring some comfort. And I think that this is one of these cases. I'm talking about a story that can be found in the book of 2 Kings chapter 6 onwards. And that story, starting from verse 24, that story is a story where the city of Samaria in the northern kingdom of Israel, they were being surrounded and besieged by the Arameans.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a people group called Aram, and they were sieging the city. When you're sieging the city, like it's kind of a situation that it's worse than what we are seeing now. We're not being sieged. Australia is not under siege, but we are in a logistical siege. Well, the Strait of Hormuz is in a logistical siege for oil, and therefore we are too, because we buy our oil from our petrol, our diesel especially, from oil refineries in Singapore, in South Korea, in Japan, other countries. But guess what? Guess where they get their oil from? From the Middle East.
Yeah.
So that's why the whole oil shortage is coming from. And in that time, the city of Samaria being besieged for such a long time, it was so severe that the Bible says here in verse 25 that, behold, a donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver.
Oh, man.
So just so we have a bit of a reference, 30 shekels of silver, you could buy a very expensive thing, which is a slave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
This is worth nearly 3 slaves.
This is like nearly 3 slaves. Like, what would be equivalent to the price of a slave today? Let's say, it's like saying, look, a head of donkey, you could buy one for $20,000, $50,000.
Wow.
Imagine that. So basically, you're spending your life savings to buy a head of donkey with like some meat.
And donkeys were not even considered a clean meat for these people.
No, that's right. It's like the refuse of the refuse of the refuse.
Yeah,
this is just like how dire the situation they were. But it doesn't stop there. If you didn't have perhaps that much money, maybe you have 5 shekels of silver, like you have a little bit, maybe like $100.
I think I know where we're going here.
You could buy a cup of dove's poop.
Of pigeon poo.
Pigeon poop. Like, little cup. Yeah, for, $5 you can buy one of that. You have to pay,
Is that a good snack?
That's not a good snack at all. But the situation was so desperate that once the king of Israel, he was walking around and he was singing, and this lady says, "Oh, king, can you please help me?" And the king just kind of came to the little, "Look, man, how can I help you? Like, what can I do here?" She says, "Yeah, can you please help me? Because my neighbor and I, we were both hungry." So she said, "Hey, can you please cook your child? And we eat from him too. And then tomorrow we can cook my child, and then we eat." And she says, I did that, and we ate my son, but then she's refusing to let her son go. Now she hid her son. So what do we do, king? And the king was like so distressed with the cannibalism that was going on in that situation, that he tore his robes and says, "You know what? This is Elijah's fault. This is Elisha's fault." It was the times of the prophet Elisha. This is God's fault, Elisha's fault. I want Elisha's head here. I need someone to blame. And it's going to be the prophet of God. So he organized a messenger to come and to visit the prophet Elijah, to give him the ultimatum. And when Elijah was there and the king went there, Elijah said, "Hey, let me tell you one thing. God is saying here that tomorrow you will be able to buy a barley and flour and like actual food for a fraction of the price that it even used to be in the best of days."
Yeah.
Like you couldn't buy like a whole 5 kilograms of flour for 50 cents.
That's crazy.
And actually, this is exactly the reaction that one of the king's officers has. Like, this is crazy, Elijah. Like, even if God opened like the floodgates of heaven, like if it starts raining, like in abundance, we can plant things. It would take months for us to see any real effect here. Mm-hmm. And Elisha looked at him and says, "Okay, because you doubted, you will see it happening, but you're not going to eat any of it."
Yeah.
So what happened in the meantime? There were a bunch of lepers.
Yeah.
4 guys in total. They were just sitting outside of the gate of the city. They couldn't go in. They were unwanted.
Yeah.
And they're talking to themselves and saying, guys, you know what? We're going to die. I mean, we don't have any food. We're already getting to the city.
We're already unwanted by our own people.
We're already unwanted.
They're not going to consider us traitors for leaving because they don't even remember we exist. So let's just go and give ourselves over to the enemy, and maybe they'll feed us something.
Maybe they'll feed us something, or maybe they'll kill us, but at least they'll put us out of our misery.
Yeah,
let's just
something.
go there. And when they walked towards the Aramean army camp, they didn't find anyone there.
It was just a ghost town of tents.
It was
flapping.
a ghost town. The tents flapping, they're looking, they're so strange, and they started to look into the tents, and they're like, wow, there's so much gold in here, there's so much clothes, like fine clothes and food, and they're starting hoarding those things to themselves, and they're starting to say, hey, guys, we're rich, like, we're absolutely rich, and they're digging in their treasures, and saying this is their ticket out of poverty. And at one point, one of them said, hey, guys, I think it's wrong for us to be hoarding. Like, this is a day of good news. We should be sharing it. We should be sharing it with other people. Like, we should be telling the king that this is happening. And what has happened, unbeknownst to them, is that overnight, God sent some sounds of chariots, and he terrified the soldiers of Aram. They're thinking, man, like the Israelites are coming with armies from Egypt, from the Hittites, from everywhere. We're doomed. We're not prepared for this. Let's just retreat. It was all a sound effect that God created somehow, like supernaturally.
Yeah.
And so these guys came back, these lepers, now that they are now having their stomachs filled, they have their clothes and everything, they came back with the gospel. They came back with the good news. And this is what the word it is used at. It's like, oh, today is a day of good news. Today is the day of the gospel. And we need to tell that story to the king. So they came up to the king, and guess what? The king said, nah, it's a trap. This is a trap. This is an ambush. The Arameans want us to go there and to do this and so on and so forth. But look, finally, some people said, what? Are you kidding me? Free food and free clothes and free gold at the camp? They went there, and because there was so much food, but not only so much food, because there was so much gold, and everybody became like millionaires instantly, pretty much. Basically, all of the food prices went down, just as the prophet Elisha said. Nobody could see that coming.
No.
And from a human perspective, how would you know that there will be so much gold and silver stashed into the soldiers' tent, plus their food, plus their clothing, plus they're going to live in retreat, And my point with this message is this, Lindsay.
What's that?
If we go through a period of time like this, if we come here in New South Wales and someone is offering you the head of a donkey for 50 grand, and we're in such a desperate situation, do not forget that God is able to provide for you in ways that you have no idea how.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
Yeah.
And they say, God, I'm struggling to put food on my table, but you said that the righteous person would not go hungry. So, Father God, I'm thanking you already for the food that I don't have yet, but I know that you are going to provide for us in ways that we cannot even comprehend. Thank you in Jesus' name, amen. And if you trust in God, God will provide for you. God will provide for your family. You're not going to die. You're not going to starve. And we are going to be traversing that crisis with him.
Remember, the Bible promise that your bread and water will be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always claim that one if you're getting to the place of actual dire starvation.
Seek ye first, but there's a condition. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness. And then all of these things will be added to you.
Yeah.
That is the story, one of my favorite stories. Let me know, comment here, radio friend, if you knew this story from in the middle of the Bible, some of the less read, I think, stories
It's one of
in the Bible.
Such a cool story.
It is a cool story. Let me know if you've been hearing it for the first time, if you already learned that story, if you have insights from that story, or what do you like about it. Tell us. 0491 064 669 is the number to text.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
It's now our interview time, and I am very blessed here to have a very special guest in the studio, Dr. David Tasker. Dr. David, welcome to the Breakfast Show.
Thank you so much.
I heard that you have a very incredible story of a time that God did something for you in your life. So, and there's involving massive waves, a very small dinghy / boat in the middle of the ocean. And I just want to say, for our listeners, what do you do at the moment, Dr. David? I heard that you're a theologian. Do you lecture? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've done all kinds of things, Skaf.
Okay.
But I'm retired, quote unquote, at the moment.
Okay.
I'm not sure what retirement means, but we're trying.
There you go. Look, Dr. David, actually, you were one of my lecturers. Like, I was like a distance student, so we wouldn't have had that relationship.
Okay.
But you were one of my lecturers when I was studying theology at Avondale back in the days.
Right.
I don't remember what. I think I wasn't. Did you used to teach New Testament or Old Testament?
Old Testament.
Oh, that's it was like a Daniel and like Old Testament. I think subject. It was really, really enjoyable. So, Dr. David, tell me a little bit about a time where you found yourself in a tiny boat in the middle of the ocean, and suddenly this biblical storm started to come through. So what happened there? How did you even get yourself into that situation? What happened?
Yeah. This was a few years ago now, when I was a lot younger. And we were living in the Solomons in quite a remote area. And I was an administrator of that region. And we were visiting some distant spot. We used our mission launch, which was about a 45-foot, 14 meters or something. Mm-hmm. And we were at this place. It was quite distant from our headquarters. And on the boat was a radio, a single sideband kind of a shortwave thing. And the message came, I had to go back to Kukundu, which was where our base was. There was going to be a delegation of Australian people from the High Commission and someone from Canberra. They wanted to see how we'd spent their money, Australian taxpayer money.
Yes.
And this was for our high school, so there was quite a bit of building that we had done. Mm. They wanted to come and check up on it. Have we used the money correctly?
Yes.
Have we wasted it? Whatever, just checking up. So when that radio call came, we're about 95 kilometres away from where we should go back to, and that boat was quite expensive to run, and I thought, I can't afford to do that. So I negotiated with some of the locals there, can I go back on one of your canoes? And so a couple of them agreed for that, and it was a 3-hour journey across back to where we were. You get absolutely drenched in this kind of a trip because these little canoes, they got an outboard motor on the back, and so there's a lot of splashing. And early morning, it's very calm. But after we'd seen our guests and they were happy with what they saw, we had to go back. But we're getting into the middle of the day now, and the wind is rising, and so are the waves. So we set out and we went around about 30 kilometres around the coast before heading across the strait, another 60-odd k's. And it was looking pretty bad. And so the guys who were with me, the two of them there, they said, let's just wait for a while and hopefully the sea will die down, the wind will get a bit calm. But it doesn't do that. It just gets worse. And
at this point, how far from the coast were you?
We were on the coast. We stayed at a village.
Okay.
Just stopped at a village waiting
for better conditions.
For better conditions. But better conditions don't always come. And it was getting worse. And I thought, we've got to get back before it gets too worse. So we set off. Now, when I'm talking about a canoe, I'm talking about a dug-out, hollowed log, just dug out from a log. But these guys are brilliant canoe makers. I watched one of them once, and he had an adze, and he was just chipping away on the inside of the canoe, and then he would, with his hands, touch either side to gauge the thickness, and if it was the thickness of his index finger, the first digit of his index finger, that was the correct.
Wow.
Yeah, and brilliant.
Incredible.
So these things would sit on the water just so balanced. They were amazing.
And they managed to equip them with like a full boat engine at the back.
Just an outboard motor. So the front end was pointy and the back end was flat, so that they could screw an outboard engine onto it.
It's like tradition meeting technology.
Yeah. So they would go at about 20 or 30 knots. No, not 30, maybe 20 knots. And so I thought, okay, we'll go. It's time. We should get back now. They kind of looked a bit, can we do this or can't we? But they were willing, so let's go. So we did. We set out across the strait. Again, I said about 60 kilometres, and you don't go far before you lose all sight of land. And we didn't have a compass, and we had no life jackets, and off we go. And the waves are getting bigger and bigger, and they're starting to cap. They're starting to crash into the canoe. So I'm sitting at the front. There's a guy in the middle, and he's really bailing fast. He had to. And the guy at the back just, controlling the engine. After some time, when the waves are getting worse and capping more, you start to think about life and possibly the ending of it. And I was just starting to think about, is this my last day on Earth? So you start to think about eternal things, and you start to, your life flashes in front of your eyes, and you think about this and you think about that, and if I was a better father at this situation, and if I could see that guy, I'd apologise to him. Now, all this kind of stuff, it was
wow.
I thought, this is the end. I'm not going to get out of this. And then as I was thinking these kind of thoughts, I heard the motor, and the motor just stopped. Instead of being full revs, it just go right down to nothing. And I thought, oh man, we've lost the engine, because that last big wave, we lost the engine. And I looked around, and it wasn't the engine that was lost, it was the guy that was driving it. He had completely disappeared, no sign of him. And so the guy in the middle that was doing the bailing, he went to the back to hold the engine and to, keep us going. I went to the middle because someone had to do the bailing. And over this mountain of water, we heard, "I'm over here!" So all credit to this guy now, this new driver. He did a circle in waves that, when you're sitting in the canoe and you're looking up, the waves are at least 3 meters.
Wow.
So these are just horrendous things. And it's not a mountain of water that that what it's going to do, because all of a sudden it drops and another one comes up in its place, and it's just impossible to imagine what's happening next. But he did a circle, and about 15 or 20 minutes later we got this guy, and he clambered on board. And I thought, we've just done a circle. Which direction are we going to head into now? No compass. These two guys chatter away in their language, and they point, and they start going. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting, Lord. This is my day. But after a while, I saw a shaft of light, and it was coming down onto the destination we were heading for. It was still quite a distance to travel, and at least we could see land. And at least there was a bit of a shaft of light on it, because the rest of the place was just whited out with clouds and rain. And
so what do you make of this shaft of light? Do you think it was just God kind of giving, hey, this is the direction you should go? Do you think that it was like God's intervention at that point?
I think so. So I had that kind of sense of peace. You kind of try and make your peace with God, as people say. In other words, you're thinking, what else do I need to do here? I guess in reflection afterwards, there's nothing you can do. I mean, just God is either looking after you, or he's saying, time out, But I just felt confident that, time was still going and we're going to be okay. I just felt that we're going to be okay. And about an hour or two later, we actually got to that place.
Wow.
So it's about 7, it's after 7. It might be, 15 minutes after 7 or something. And that meeting should have started at 7. And all the people are in the meeting house and they're singing. And I think, well, I got confidence that something's going to happen. So just as well I did. I get cleaned up and go back, and that's the story.
Wow, that is amazing. So the people that were seeing in the house, so were these the people representing the High Commission?
No. This was the village people, because we were at this place for a series of meetings, and people would come from miles away, literally up and down the coast, and we had films, and one of them I remember very clearly was called Careless Charlie, and it was a health film just showing people hygiene and things like that. So they were interested in the film, and they were interested in what we had to say for them.
Oh, so when you return back to the village from which you departed originally, not
Yes,
to
yes.
To the place where the meeting with
No.
the government officials was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
What happened with them? Like, did you end up making contact with them and saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't come to
No,
our
I got
commitment"?
there. I got to that
You got
place.
to the place.
I was able to meet them. We had a walk around the campus. They were able to see what we had built. They were happy, and they went back very soon after on the chartered plane that they had. So then I had to head back to my appointment for the evening.
And did you get to share with them what happened? Like, how was the journey to?
No.
So they were absolutely clueless that you were just a couple of hours before. You're just putting your life in straight with God because you're thinking that.
Yeah, you've
So
missed.
he went to
Yeah.
talk with the people from the Royal Commission, and then after that, then this whole experience on the waves takes place immediately after that.
Okay, I'm getting it.
That's why it was the middle of the day,
Yeah.
and the waves were getting worse because he'd gone back
Okay.
on this little canoe.
Okay, now I got situated here.
So we went early morning to get
Yes,
to this.
so we had the meetings, and then on your trip back, that's when this whole ordeal has happened. So I'm wondering here, one question that I wanted to ask, like, did that experience change your relationship with God in any way? Like, after that experience, like, did you, when you're praying to God or you're seeing God, like, did you learn anything different from that?
Maybe. Sometimes you face a situation where there's nothing humanly possible. There's nothing you can do. And I guess I learned at that time, well, when there's nothing that you can do, there's no use getting anxious, no use stewing. Put it in God's hands, and whatever happens is going to be okay.
And look, Dr. David, I think that a lot of people that I've been talking to, they are quite anxious regarding the current situation. Because, look, we hear of wars and rumors of wars, and surely Jesus says, look, don't worry about them. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of the birth pangs. Lift up your head, rejoice in everything. But I think that for a long time, we haven't seen that how a conflict overseas, miles and miles away from where we are, they are impacting our livelihoods right now. And a lot of people are already hurting a lot with increased prices of everything, and a lot of people living from paycheck to paycheck and barely making ends meet. And now all of a sudden they say, hey, by the way, your food is going to increase, and maybe you're not going to even going to have fuel. Maybe you don't have to have a job or a work. How do you think, now that you have experienced this helpless situation, what would you say to, let's say, a young person facing, or maybe a young family facing these consequences of perhaps an impending loss of employment, loss of income, even greater pressures in their family budget? What would you be your advice to them based on in that experience that you lived through?
Oh, that's a big question. But let me just say this, take God seriously, because there will be times when there's absolutely nothing you can do. And even worrying about it is not going to improve the situation. As Jesus says, if you worry, it's not going to add height to your statue. It's not going to put food on your table. You're just totally dependent upon what God can do for you. And that gives you a sense of peace. So I think what I've learned from this is, in those times where it's very stressful, you can choose either to be very stressed or to take God seriously when he says, I'm always with you.
Yes, I love it. There are situations that we have nothing we can do, but you know what? If we can rely and trust in God, say, God, like I'm really at your hands here. That can be quite reassuring, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I found.
Yeah. And look, Dr. David, this is quite an interesting question. I'm wondering, Lindsay, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask also to Dr. David? If not, look, one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, what happened to the other two canoe guys? Were they in peace? Were you at peace at that time? Like because you were kind of facing your fate. You're thinking that, like, I'm going to die here. What about your colleagues at the boat? How were they taking this whole experience? Were they chilled, or were they, just like you, or even more stressed out? What is your recollection of their attitude?
The difference between me and them is that I was a stranger in a strange place. They were locals. They knew the place. And the reason that they could be so sure about where they were going is they could read the waves and the currents, and they knew which direction to head out. So they were chill. They were fine.
Wow. I think there's even a spiritual application there, isn't it? Is that when we know that we're connected with the God, when we kind of know where the currents of the world are taking anyway, we know the direction of our life, that ultimately, even if we lose our life, we ended up finding it in heaven, at the resurrection with Jesus. And that can also perhaps give us that same sense of peace and safety, knowing where we are going.
Yes.
It reminds me of Jesus, when he came to his disciples and says, hey, to Peter, at the moment, Peter, you can choose whatever you want to dress and what you want to wear and where you want to go, but there's going to be a time that you're not going to be choosing where you'll be going and what to wear. And Jesus was signifying his death.
Yeah.
And I think that when God can give us that assurance as well, hey, we know that even in the worst case scenario, aka we die, we know where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
We're resting at the grave until Jesus calls us back and there to eternity and never to suffer again. And I think that also can bring comfort, can it?
Yes, and it's important to know that in terms of our eternal destiny, it's not what we do. It's what God does for us and what he has done in Christ. And as we keep that in mind, in the back of our mind, that gives us a stability to go through any situation we might face.
Yeah, amazing. Look, Dr. David, thank you so much for coming here, for sharing with us. We actually want to give a giveaway. We have a book called Answers to Prayers by Roger Murnau. This is a fantastic book as well. We know Roger Murnau shares stories similar to stories of Dr. David Tasker, and stories where he was in situations where there's nothing humanly possible that could be done to leave the situation, yet God delivered. So, Dr. David, thank you so much for sharing this story. I'm going to keep and treasure that story in my heart and meditate and think about it today. Think, what? Wow, what would I do if I was in that situation? Would I be able to trust in God? Say, God, here is my life, here's my heart. Help me be in peace with Him or be delivered from it. I want to be able to have that experience of trust in Him, particularly as we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I do know one thing. I want to be able to trust in God as we go. So, Dr. David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to have you again next time. Perhaps have other stories that you would like to share. We would love to hear them here on the studio, on the radio. We're now going to be listening to Keith and Kristen Getty with Across the Lands. You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM. And if you have any messages or any questions, you can text us in 0491 064 669. Our hashtag for our giveaway is #answers.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.